Sarah Martinez had always been different from the other kids at Westfield High School. While her classmates spent their weekends at the mall or hanging out at coffee shops, she spent hers at military training exercises with the Civil Air Patrol. The worn camouflage jacket she wore every Friday wasn't a fashion statement or an attempt to look tough. It belonged to her older brother Miguel, who had died serving overseas 3 years ago. The jacket was too big for her small frame, hanging loosely on her shoulders like a protective shield. The name tape read Martinez in bold black letters, and there was a small tear near the left pocket where Miguel had caught it on barbed wire during a training exercise. Sarah never tried to fix it. That tear was part of Miguel's story, and now it was part of hers. Every morning, Sarah walked through the school hallways while other students whispered and pointed. The popular kids, led by Madison Wells and her crew, found endless entertainment in mocking what they called Sarah's military wannabe look. They didn't understand that the jacket represented something much deeper than clothing choices. "Look, it's G.I. Jane," Madison would sneer as Sarah passed by her locker. "Still playing soldier, Sarah? When are you going to grow up and dress like a normal person?" Sarah never responded to the taunts. She had learned from Miguel that dignity meant staying silent in the face of ignorance. Her brother had taught her that real strength wasn't about fighting back with words or fists. It was about standing firm in your beliefs, even when the whole world seemed to be laughing at you. The mockery wasn't limited to just Madison's group. Even some of the teachers seemed uncomfortable with Sarah's appearance. Mrs. Henderson, the English teacher, had once suggested that Sarah might want to dress more appropriately for school. Mr. Johnson, the math teacher, often made jokes about Sarah being ready for war instead of algebra class. But Sarah had bigger things on her mind than the opinions of teenagers who had never lost anyone important. Every day after school, she hurried to the local National Guard armory where she volunteered with youth programs. Captain Rodriguez, a family friend who had served with Miguel, had taken Sarah under his wing after her brother's death. "Your brother would be proud of the young woman you're becoming," Captain Rodriguez often told her. "You have his sense of duty and his quiet strength. Don't let anyone take that away from you." Sarah's mother, Elena, worried about her daughter's isolation at school. She had suggested many times that Sarah might make more friends if she tried to fit in better. But Elena also understood that the camouflage jacket was Sarah's way of keeping Miguel's memory alive. After losing one child, she wasn't about to discourage the other from honoring her brother's service. "Mija," Elena would say while packing Sarah's lunch each morning, "remember that sometimes people mock what they don't understand. Your brother died protecting the freedom of people who will never know his name. That jacket represents something bigger than their small minds can grasp." At home, Sarah's room was a shrine to military service. Photos of Miguel in his uniform covered one wall, alongside certificates and awards he had earned during his short but distinguished career. Sarah had memorized every detail of his service record. She knew the dates of his deployments, the names of his unit members, and the circumstances of the mission where he had made the ultimate sacrifice. The Civil Air Patrol became Sarah's refuge from the daily torment at school. There, surrounded by other young people who understood the importance of service, she felt like she belonged. She excelled in every training exercise, from search and rescue simulations to emergency communications drills. Her instructors praised her leadership abilities and her natural talent for military protocols. "Martinez has the makings of an outstanding officer," Colonel Barnes wrote in one of Sarah's evaluation reports. "She demonstrates maturity beyond her years and an innate understanding of military bearing and discipline." But these achievements meant nothing to her classmates at Westfield High. They saw only a weird girl who dressed like she was going to war instead of going to chemistry class. The harassment escalated as the school year progressed. Students would make explosion sounds when she walked by, pretending to duck for cover. Someone had even started a cruel social media group called Sarah's Army where they posted mocking photos and comments about her appearance. The worst incident happened during lunch period in early spring. Sarah was sitting alone, as usual, reading a biography of a female fighter pilot, when Madison and her friends surrounded her table. Madison grabbed the book and held it up for everyone to see. "Look everyone, G.I. Jane is studying for her pretend military career," Madison announced loudly, causing half the cafeteria to turn and stare. "Maybe she thinks reading about real soldiers will make her one too." Sarah stood up calmly and extended her hand. "Please give me back my book, Madison." "What are you going to do, soldier girl? Call in an airstrike?" Madison laughed, and her followers joined in. Face it, Sarah. You're just a weird kid playing dress up. Real military people would laugh at you just as much as we do. The word stung because Sarah sometimes wondered if Madison might be right. Did real service members see her as just another teenager playing soldier? Was she dishonoring Miguel's memory by wearing his jacket to school every day? These doubts crept into her mind during her darkest moments, but she pushed them away by remembering her brother's words. Service isn't about what other people think of you, Miguel had told her during his last leave before deployment. It's about what you're willing to sacrifice for something bigger than yourself. Don't ever let anyone convince you that your desire to serve isn't real or important. As the school year continued, Sarah threw herself even deeper into her Civil Air Patrol activities. She volunteered for extra training sessions and took on leadership roles in youth programs. When other cadets complained about difficult exercises or boring lectures, Sarah embraced every challenge with enthusiasm. Her dedication didn't go unnoticed by the adult leaders in the program. Major Williams, the squadron commander, began including Sarah in planning sessions for special events and training exercises. She was invited to attend leadership conferences typically reserved for older cadets. Her input on youth recruitment strategies was valued and implemented. Sarah has demonstrated exceptional potential, Major Williams noted in his quarterly report to regional headquarters. I strongly recommend her for advanced leadership opportunities and accelerated promotion consideration. Meanwhile, at school, the mockery continued with relentless consistency. Sarah's classmates seemed to view her as a permanent source of entertainment. They had given up any pretense of subtlety, openly pointing and laughing whenever she entered a room. Some had even started imitating military marching behind her in the hallways. The guidance counselor, Miss Thompson, called Sarah into her office one afternoon. The woman's expression was kind but concerned as she gestured for Sarah to take a seat across from her desk. Sarah, I want to talk to you about how things are going here at school, Miss Thompson began carefully. I know this year has been challenging for you socially. Have you considered that maybe trying to fit in a little more might make things easier? Sarah looked down at her hands, which were folded in her lap. The suggestion wasn't new. She had heard variations of it from teachers, counselors, and even some well-meaning family friends. But changing who she was to satisfy her tormentors felt like betraying everything Miguel had taught her about integrity. Ms. Thompson, Sarah said quietly, if I change who I am to make other people comfortable, then who am I really? My brother died defending the rights of people to be themselves, to believe what they want to believe. How can I honor his memory by giving up my own beliefs just to avoid being laughed at? Ms. Thompson nodded slowly, clearly moved by Sarah's response. You're wise beyond your years, Sarah. But I worry about the emotional toll this isolation is taking on you. You seem so alone here. I'm not alone, Sarah replied firmly. I have my family, my Civil Air Patrol squadron, and my brother's memory to guide me. That's more than enough. As spring turned toward summer, Sarah began preparing for one of the most important events of her young life. She had been selected to participate in a regional Civil Air Patrol encampment that would bring together cadets from across 3 states. The week-long program would include advanced leadership training, flight instruction, and evaluations for special recognitions. Captain Rodriguez helped Sarah prepare for the encampment with extra training sessions and mock interviews. He could see that this opportunity meant everything to her, representing validation of her commitment to service and her potential for future military leadership. This encampment could open doors for you that most people your age never even know exist, Captain Rodriguez explained as they practiced drill formations in the armory parking lot. Military academy recommendations, scholarship opportunities, early enlistment programs with guaranteed career fields. You have the potential to go far in military service, Sarah. At school, Sarah's anticipation for the encampment provided a bright spot in otherwise difficult days. She found herself looking forward to spending time with other young people who shared her values and understood her commitment to service. The idea of a week without mockery and harassment felt like a vacation. But her classmates at Westfield High had other plans. Word had somehow gotten out about Sarah's upcoming Civil Air Patrol event, and Madison's group had decided to make it the subject of their latest round of torment. I heard G.I. Jane is going to military camp, Madison announced during lunch, speaking loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. Maybe they'll finally teach her how to be a real soldier instead of just playing dress up. I bet she gets kicked out the first day, added Jessica, one of Madison's followers. Real military people aren't going to put up with her pretend soldier act. Sarah tried to ignore the comments, but they planted seeds of doubt that grew stronger as the encampment approached. What if her classmates were right? What if she had been fooling herself about her abilities and potential? What if the adult leaders at the encampment saw through her confidence and recognized her as just another teenager playing soldier? The night before leaving for the encampment, Sarah sat in her room surrounded by Miguel's photos and awards. She held his Purple Heart in her hands, feeling the weight of the medal and everything it represented. Her brother had earned this recognition through ultimate sacrifice, while she hadn't proven herself in any real way yet. "Miguel," she whispered to his photo, "I hope I don't disappoint you or embarrass your memory. I'm trying to be worthy of wearing your jacket, but sometimes I wonder if I'm strong enough." As she packed her bags for the encampment, Sarah included Miguel's jacket along with her Civil Air Patrol uniforms. The jacket would serve as both protection and inspiration during the challenges ahead. Whatever happened at the encampment, she would face it with the same quiet dignity that Miguel had taught her to maintain in the face of adversity. The next morning, Elena drove Sarah to the departure point where other cadets were gathering for transportation to the encampment. Sarah hugged her mother goodbye, promising to call every evening and to make the family proud. "Mija," Elena said, holding her daughter's face in her hands, "you already make us proud every single day. Your brother is watching over you, and he knows what a strong, honorable young woman you've become." As the bus pulled away from Westfield, Sarah looked back at the town that had been the source of so much pain and mockery. In a week, she would return with new experiences, new confidence, and perhaps new perspectives on her future. But she had no idea that her return would bring changes that would transform not just her own life, but the entire school community that had dismissed her for so long. The encampment would prove to be everything Captain Rodriguez had promised and more. Sarah would excel in every activity, earn recognition from senior officers, and forge friendships with cadets who would become lifelong contacts in military service. But, most importantly, she would discover that her commitment to service was not only real and valid, but exceptional enough to attract attention from some very important people. As the bus carried her toward her future, Sarah Martinez had no way of knowing that in exactly 1 week, a Black Hawk helicopter would touch down on the football field at Westfield High School, and everything would change forever. The Civil Air Patrol encampment at Camp Harrison stretched across 200 acres of wooded terrain in the mountains, 3 hours from Westfield. Sarah stepped off the bus and immediately felt something she rarely experienced at school: she belonged here. Cadets in crisp uniforms moved with purpose across the grounds, their bearing confident and their voices respectful as they greeted the new arrivals. Colonel Patricia Hayes, the encampment commander, stood at the entrance to address the incoming cadets. Her uniform was impeccable, her posture ramrod straight, and her eyes held the sharp intelligence of someone who had earned every ribbon and medal adorning her chest through decades of distinguished service. "Welcome to what will be the most challenging and rewarding week of your young lives," Colonel Hayes announced, her voice carrying easily across the assembly area. "You were selected for this encampment because your squadron commanders believe you have exceptional potential. This week will determine whether their faith in you is justified." Sarah felt a thrill of nervous excitement as she was assigned to Blue Flight, a group of 12 cadets from various squadrons across the region. Her flight leader was Cadet Captain Marcus Chen, an 18-year-old from California who had already received appointments to 3 military academies. The other cadets in her flight came from diverse backgrounds, but they all shared the same serious commitment to military service that Sarah had been mocked for at Westfield High. The first day included orientation briefings, uniform inspections, and initial evaluations. Sarah excelled in every activity, her attention to detail and military bearing earning approving nods from the instructors. When other cadets struggled with drill movements or military protocols, Sarah stepped forward to help without being asked, demonstrating natural leadership abilities that hadn't gone unnoticed. During the evening meal, Sarah found herself sitting with cadets who spoke her language. They discussed military history, current events affecting national security, and their aspirations for military careers with the same passion that her Westfield classmates reserved for celebrity gossip and social media drama. "What branch are you planning to pursue?" asked Cadet Lieutenant Sarah Kim, a junior from Oregon who had already completed private pilot training. "You carry yourself like someone who's been thinking about this for a while." Sarah touched Miguel's name tape on her jacket before responding. "Army, like my brother. He died in Afghanistan 3 years ago. I want to serve in his honor and continue what he started." The table fell silent for a moment, not out of discomfort but out of respect. These cadets understood the weight of military sacrifice in ways that civilian teenagers couldn't comprehend. They knew that service often came with a price, and they honored those who had paid it. "What was his MOS?" asked Cadet Master Sergeant David Thompson, using the military term for job specialty. "Combat engineer," Sarah replied with pride. "He specialized in route clearance and explosive ordnance disposal. He saved his entire convoy when he spotted an IED that others had missed. The blast that killed him would have taken out 6 other soldiers if he hadn't acted." The respect in her fellow cadets' eyes was genuine and profound. Here, Miguel's sacrifice meant something. Here, Sarah's desire to honor his memory through service was understood and valued rather than mocked and dismissed. The second day brought more intensive training. Sarah's flight participated in land navigation exercises, emergency response scenarios, and leadership rotations where each cadet took turns commanding the group through various challenges. When Sarah's turn came to lead, she guided her flight through a complex search and rescue simulation with precision and confidence that impressed both her peers and the evaluating officers. Major Rebecca Santos, one of the senior instructors, pulled Sarah aside after the exercise. "Cadet Martinez, your performance today was outstanding. Your ability to remain calm under pressure and make sound decisions quickly is remarkable for someone your age. Have you given thought to specific career paths within the military?" "Yes, ma'am," Sarah responded. "I'm interested in military intelligence or special operations, though I know those fields require extensive training and evaluation." Major Santos nodded approvingly. "Both excellent choices for someone with your analytical skills and leadership potential. I'm going to recommend you for some specialized briefings we typically reserve for senior cadets. I think you're ready for more advanced material." That evening, Sarah called home as promised. Elena could hear the excitement and confidence in her daughter's voice as she described the day's activities. For the first time in months, Sarah sounded like the happy, engaged teenager she had been before the harassment at school had worn down her spirit. "Mommy, it's incredible here," Sarah said, her voice animated with enthusiasm. "Everyone understands why service matters. Nobody thinks I'm weird for wanting to honor Miguel's memory. They actually respect it." "I'm so proud of you, Mija," Elena responded, tears forming in her eyes. "Your brother would be too. He always knew you had the heart of a warrior." The third day brought unexpected opportunities. Colonel Hayes personally selected 5 cadets for a special leadership symposium that included presentations from active duty officers visiting the encampment. Sarah was chosen along with 4 other cadets who had demonstrated exceptional performance during the first 2 days. The visiting officers included a Navy SEAL commander, an Air Force pilot who had flown combat missions over Iraq, an Army Ranger captain fresh from deployment, and a Marine Corps intelligence officer with extensive experience in counterterrorism operations. They spoke about the realities of military service, the challenges of leadership under fire, and the importance of developing strong moral foundations early in military careers. After the presentations, the officers mingled with the selected cadets, engaging in one-on-one conversations about career aspirations and potential paths forward. Commander Jackson, the Navy SEAL, spent considerable time talking with Sarah about her goals and her brother's service. "Your brother sounds like the kind of soldier every commander wants in their unit," Commander Jackson said. "Someone willing to put others' lives ahead of their own safety. That's not common, even in the military. The fact that you're inspired by his example rather than discouraged by his sacrifice tells me a lot about your character." "Sir, I just want to serve something bigger than myself," Sarah replied. "My brother showed me what that looks like, and I want to live up to his example." Commander Jackson nodded thoughtfully. "Have you considered that there might be ways to serve that go beyond traditional military roles? Sometimes the most impactful service happens in unexpected ways, through unexpected opportunities." Sarah wasn't sure what he meant, but something in his tone suggested that this conversation was more significant than casual career counseling. She filed his words away to think about later, focusing on absorbing every detail of the presentations and discussions. The fourth day included the most challenging exercises yet. Sarah's flight participated in a 12-hour field training exercise that tested everything they had learned during the week. They navigated through dense forest, established communication checkpoints, conducted mock rescue operations, and demonstrated small unit leadership under simulated stress conditions. Sarah found herself naturally taking charge during critical moments, even when she wasn't designated as the flight leader. Her fellow cadets looked to her for guidance when situations became complex, and she responded with calm competence that belied her age and limited experience. Captain Miller, one of the evaluating officers, noted Sarah's performance with particular interest. He had been watching her throughout the week, impressed by her combination of technical competence, natural leadership, and unwavering moral character. As the exercise concluded, he made a decision that would change the trajectory of Sarah's life. That evening, Captain Miller placed a secure phone call to a contact at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, home of the 101st Airborne Division. The conversation was brief but consequential. "General Morrison, I have a cadet here who I think you need to meet," Captain Miller said. "She's the sister of Staff Sergeant Miguel Martinez, who was killed in action 3 years ago during route clearance operations in Helmand Province. This young woman has exceptional potential, and her commitment to service is absolutely genuine." "Tell me more," General Morrison replied, his interest clearly piqued. "Sir, she's only 16, but she carries herself like a seasoned NCO. Her tactical thinking is advanced, her leadership is natural, and her moral foundation is unshakable. More importantly, she's been enduring harassment at her civilian high school because of her commitment to military service. She wears her brother's camouflage jacket to school every day and refuses to compromise her values despite constant mockery from her peers." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Captain Miller, I knew Staff Sergeant Martinez. He was one of the finest soldiers I ever had the privilege to command. If his sister has even half his character, she's someone we need to encourage and support. What do you have in mind?" "Sir, I think she deserves to see what real military appreciation looks like. Her school has a graduation ceremony next Friday. Maybe it's time they learned what kind of person they've been mocking." General Morrison's response was immediate and decisive. "Make it happen, Captain. Staff Sergeant Martinez saved American lives with his sacrifice. The least we can do is honor his sister's commitment to continuing his legacy." The final day of encampment included award ceremonies and evaluations. Sarah received the Distinguished Cadet Award for Overall Excellence, the Leadership Medal for her performance during field exercises, and special recognition for academic achievement during the military history components of the program. But the most meaningful moment came when Colonel Hayes pulled Sarah aside for a private conversation. The colonel's expression was serious but warm as she spoke. "Cadet Martinez, you've impressed everyone here this week. Your combination of natural ability, moral character, and dedication to service is rare. But, more than that, your resilience in the face of adversity shows me that you have what it takes to succeed in military leadership roles." "Thank you, ma'am," Sarah responded, standing at attention. "I want you to know that your performance here has attracted attention from some very senior military leaders. People who knew your brother and respect his sacrifice. They're interested in ensuring that you have every opportunity to succeed in your military aspirations." Sarah felt a flush of pride and nervousness. The idea that senior military leaders knew about her felt both thrilling and intimidating. "Ma'am, I just want to serve with honor like my brother did." "I have no doubt that you will," Colonel Hayes replied. "In fact, I'm confident that your service will exceed even your own expectations. Some opportunities are coming your way that will help demonstrate to everyone just how special you really are." As Sarah packed her belongings for the trip home, she reflected on the week that had changed her perspective on her own potential. For 5 days, she had been surrounded by people who shared her values, respected her commitments, and encouraged her aspirations. She had proven to herself that her dedication to military service was not only valid but exceptional. The other cadets in her flight had become genuine friends, exchanging contact information and promising to stay in touch as they pursued their various paths toward military careers. For the first time in years, Sarah felt like she was part of a community that understood and valued who she was. Cadet Captain Chen approached her as they waited for the buses to arrive. "Sarah, you're going to do incredible things in the military. Don't let anyone back home convince you otherwise. What we saw this week was the real you, and the real you is outstanding." "Thanks, Marcus," Sarah replied, touched by his sincerity. "This week showed me that I'm not crazy for wanting to serve. I was starting to wonder if everyone at school might be right about me being weird." "They're not right," Cadet Lieutenant Kim interjected, joining the conversation. "They just don't understand what real service means. You're going to show them someday." As the bus pulled away from Camp Harrison, Sarah felt a mixture of sadness at leaving and excitement about returning home with new confidence and clarity about her future. She had no idea that Captain Miller's phone call had set in motion events that would culminate in the most dramatic demonstration of military respect her hometown had ever witnessed. The 5-hour bus ride gave Sarah time to process everything she had learned and experienced. She thought about Miguel and how proud he would be of her performance at the encampment. She thought about her mother and how exciting it would be to share stories of her success. And she thought about returning to Westfield High School with new strength to face whatever mockery awaited her. But, mostly, she thought about Commander Jackson's cryptic comment about unexpected opportunities for service. She had the feeling that something significant was about to happen, though she couldn't imagine what form it might take. As the bus crossed the city limits of Westfield, Sarah noticed unusual military vehicle activity on the highways. Several convoys of army trucks were moving toward the town, and she spotted what looked like advanced security teams positioned at various points along the route. But she dismissed it as coincidence, assuming the vehicles were simply passing through on their way to training exercises elsewhere. Sarah Martinez was about to discover that sometimes the most impactful service happens when the military decides to honor one of their own, and that her return to Westfield High School would be far more dramatic than anyone could have imagined. Friday morning arrived with unseasonably clear skies and a crisp breeze that carried the scent of spring flowers across Westfield. Sarah woke early, feeling a mixture of anticipation and dread about returning to school after her transformative week at the Civil Air Patrol encampment. She had spent the previous evening sharing stories with her mother about her achievements and the respect she had earned from military personnel, but now she faced the reality of returning to an environment where those same achievements would likely be mocked. Elena noticed her daughter's subdued mood over breakfast. "Mija, you seem worried about going back to school. Remember what you accomplished this week. Those people saw the real you, and they were impressed. Don't let anyone take that confidence away from you." Sarah nodded, pulling on Miguel's camouflage jacket with renewed purpose. The Distinguished Cadet Award pin that Colonel Hayes had presented to her was now attached to the jacket, a small but visible symbol of her recent success. She had decided to wear it despite knowing it would probably attract more unwanted attention from her classmates. "I won't let them get to me, Mommy," Sarah said, shouldering her backpack. "I know who I am now, and I know I'm on the right path. Whatever they say today doesn't matter." As Sarah walked toward school, she passed several military vehicles parked in various locations throughout the town. She found it odd but assumed they were related to some training exercise or recruitment event. Westfield occasionally hosted military recruiters at the high school, though those events typically involved a single table in the cafeteria rather than this level of visible military presence. At Westfield High School, the morning began like any other. Students gathered in their usual clusters, discussing weekend plans and upcoming summer vacation. Madison Wells and her group of followers occupied their traditional spot near the main entrance, perfectly positioned to comment on everyone who passed by. "Look who's back," Madison announced as Sarah approached the building. "How was military camp, G.I. Jane? Did they teach you how to march in formation, or are you still just playing dress up?" Sarah walked past without responding, but Madison wasn't finished. "Oh, what's that shiny new toy on your jacket? Another fake award to impress people who don't know any better?" Jessica, Madison's ever-present sidekick, laughed loudly. "Maybe she bought it at an army surplus store. You can get all kinds of fake military stuff there." For the first time in months, the comments didn't sting. Sarah had spent a week earning genuine respect from real military personnel who understood the value of service and sacrifice. The opinions of teenagers who had never risked anything for anyone seemed suddenly irrelevant. During first period English, Mrs. Henderson noticed the new pin on Sarah's jacket. "Sarah, I see you have some new hardware there. Would you like to share with the class what you did over the break?" Sarah stood up, feeling more confident than she had in months. "I attended a Civil Air Patrol leadership encampment where I received recognition for outstanding performance in military training exercises. I also had the opportunity to meet with active duty officers from various branches of the military to discuss career opportunities." A few students snickered, but Sarah continued with calm dignity. "The encampment taught me a lot about leadership, teamwork, and the importance of standing up for your values even when other people don't understand them." Mrs. Henderson nodded approvingly. "That sounds like a valuable experience, Sarah. Thank you for sharing." But, as soon as the bell rang, the mockery resumed. Students in the hallway began making exaggerated saluting motions when they saw Sarah, and someone had taped a crude drawing of a soldier to her locker with the words "General Wannabe" scrawled across it. Sarah removed the drawing without emotion and placed it in a nearby trash can. The week at Camp Harrison had given her perspective on what really mattered, and the childish pranks of her classmates no longer had the power to diminish her sense of purpose. During lunch, Sarah sat alone as usual, reading a book about military leadership strategies. She had brought the book as a shield against the daily harassment, but also because she genuinely wanted to continue learning about the career path that now seemed more attainable than ever. Madison and her crew approached Sarah's table with their typical swagger, but something was different about their demeanor. They seemed almost desperate to provoke a reaction, as if they sensed that their usual tactics weren't having the desired effect. "You know what I heard?" Madison said loudly, ensuring that surrounding tables could hear. "I heard that military camps for teenagers are just daycare centers for kids who can't handle real life." "Is that what you were doing, Sarah? Playing with toy soldiers while the rest of us were dealing with reality?" Sarah looked up from her book and met Madison's eyes directly. "Madison, I spent last week learning advanced leadership techniques from combat veterans and preparing for a military career that will involve serving my country and protecting people's freedom." "What did you do with your week off?" The question caught Madison off guard. She was accustomed to Sarah's silence, not direct confrontation delivered with calm confidence. I had a real vacation like a normal person. I didn't need to pretend to be something I'm not." "I'm not pretending to be anything," Sarah replied evenly. "I'm preparing to serve my country in honor of my brother who died protecting people he had never met." "If that seems fake to you, then you don't understand what real service means." Several students at nearby tables had stopped eating to listen to the exchange. For the first time, Sarah wasn't being mocked but was actually being heard. Madison seemed to realize she was losing control of the situation. "Whatever," Madison said, her voice less confident than usual. "You can play soldier all you want, but everyone knows you're just a weird kid who watches too many war movies." As Madison and her group walked away, Sarah felt a surge of satisfaction. She had stood up for herself without losing her dignity or compromising her values. The week at Camp Harrison had given her the confidence to defend her choices with quiet strength rather than angry defensiveness. But the day was far from over, and events were already in motion that would transform the entire dynamic at Westfield High School. Throughout the morning, military personnel in civilian clothes had been conducting security sweeps of the school grounds and surrounding areas. Parents and community members had received mysterious invitations to attend a special presentation during the lunch period, though the details remained deliberately vague. Principal Roberts had been contacted by military officials early that morning and informed that a significant event would be taking place at the school. He was asked to ensure that the entire student body would be assembled on the football field during lunch period for what was described as an important recognition ceremony. As students finished eating lunch, an announcement came over the school's public address system. "All students and staff please report immediately to the football field for a mandatory assembly. This is not a drill. All students and staff must report to the football field immediately." Confused murmurs filled the hallways as students and teachers made their way outside. Sarah gathered her belongings and joined the crowd, wondering what could be important enough to interrupt the school day with such short notice. She noticed that many parents and community members were already gathered in the stands, creating an audience much larger than typical school assemblies. Principal Roberts stood at a podium that had been hastily set up at the 50-yard line, looking nervous and slightly overwhelmed. Behind him, several men in military dress uniforms stood at attention, their bearing unmistakably professional and their ribbon racks indicating significant combat experience. "Students and staff," Principal Roberts began, his voice carrying across the field through a portable sound system, "we have been asked to host a very special ceremony today. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Colonel Mitchell, who will explain the purpose of this gathering." Colonel Mitchell stepped forward, his presence commanding immediate attention from the assembled crowd. His uniform was pristine, his posture perfect, and his voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to addressing large groups of soldiers. "Citizens of Westfield," Colonel Mitchell began, "I am here today to honor a young woman who has demonstrated exceptional commitment to military service and has earned the respect of senior military leaders throughout our region." Sarah felt a flutter of nervousness as she realized that this ceremony somehow involved her, though she couldn't imagine how or why. Around her, students began whispering and pointing as they tried to figure out what was happening. 3 years ago, this community lost a hero, Colonel Mitchell continued. Staff Sergeant Miguel Martinez died in Afghanistan while serving with distinction as a combat engineer. His sacrifice saved the lives of his fellow soldiers and exemplified the highest traditions of military service. A hush fell over the crowd as they began to understand the gravity of the ceremony. Many students had heard Sarah mention her brother's death, but few had understood the circumstances or significance of his sacrifice. Staff Sergeant Martinez's sister, Sarah, is a student here at Westfield High School, Colonel Mitchell said, his voice carrying clearly across the field. Despite facing ridicule and harassment from her peers, she has maintained unwavering commitment to honoring her brother's memory through her own dedication to military service. Sarah felt her face flush as hundreds of eyes turned to look for her in the crowd. She stood frozen, overwhelmed by the sudden attention and the realization that her story was being told to the entire school community. Sarah Martinez has recently completed advanced leadership training at a Civil Air Patrol encampment where she earned recognition for outstanding performance and demonstrated exceptional potential for military leadership, Colonel Mitchell continued. Her instructors report that she possesses the same qualities of courage, integrity, and selfless service that distinguished her brother's military career. Madison and her group, standing several rows ahead of Sarah, turned to stare with expressions of shock and growing understanding. The jokes and mockery they had directed at Sarah throughout the year suddenly seemed petty and cruel in the context of genuine military recognition. Today, we are here to present Sarah Martinez with a special commendation from the Department of the Army in recognition of her outstanding commitment to military service and her dedication to honoring fallen soldiers through her own exemplary conduct. Colonel Mitchell paused, looking directly at Sarah across the crowded field. "Cadet Martinez, please step forward." Sarah felt her legs trembling as she began moving through the crowd toward the podium. Students parted to create a path, their expressions ranging from amazement to shame as they realized the significance of the ceremony they were witnessing. As Sarah walked across the football field, she could see her mother in the stands, tears streaming down her face as she watched her daughter receive the recognition she had always deserved. Captain Rodriguez was there too, along with other members of her Civil Air Patrol squadron, all beaming with pride. But the most powerful moment came when Sarah reached the podium and saw who was standing behind Colonel Mitchell. General Morrison, the commanding general of the 101st Airborne Division, stepped forward with a medal case in his hands. "General Morrison served with your brother in Afghanistan," Colonel Mitchell explained to the now silent crowd. "He specifically requested the opportunity to present this award to you personally." General Morrison's eyes were kind but intense as he looked at Sarah. "Cadet Martinez, your brother saved my soldiers' lives with his courage and sacrifice. Today, I want to honor both his memory and your commitment to continuing his legacy of service." As the general pinned the commendation medal to Sarah's jacket, right next to Miguel's name tape, the sound of rotor blades began to fill the air. In the distance, a black helicopter was approaching the school, growing larger and louder as it prepared to land on the football field. The ceremony was about to reach its most dramatic moment, and Sarah Martinez was about to experience recognition that would transform not just her own life, but the entire community's understanding of what real service and sacrifice truly meant. The thunderous sound of rotor blades grew louder as the Black Hawk helicopter descended toward the football field, creating a whirlwind of dust and debris that sent papers flying and forced everyone to shield their eyes. Students who had been chattering nervously fell completely silent, awestruck by the dramatic arrival of the military aircraft at their small-town high school. Sarah stood at the podium, her heart pounding as she watched the massive helicopter settle onto the field with precision that spoke to the skill of its crew. The engines wound down gradually, but the presence of the aircraft transformed the entire atmosphere of the ceremony from special recognition to something approaching a military operation. General Morrison placed his hand on Sarah's shoulder as the helicopter's crew emerged. Two pilots in full flight gear stepped out first, followed by a team of soldiers whose bearing and equipment marked them as elite special operations personnel. But it was the final passenger who caused gasps throughout the crowd. Secretary of Defense Patricia Hawkins stepped down from the Black Hawk, her civilian clothes unable to disguise the commanding presence that had earned her respect throughout the military hierarchy. She was flanked by two aide-de-camp officers carrying briefcases that suggested this visit involved more than ceremonial recognition. "Students and faculty of Westfield High School," Secretary Hawkins said as she approached the podium, her voice amplified by the portable sound system, "I have traveled here today to personally honor a young woman whose commitment to military service has impressed senior military leaders throughout our nation." The crowd was absolutely silent now, understanding that they were witnessing something unprecedented. Parents pulled out cell phones to record the moment, while students who had spent months mocking Sarah stood in stunned silence, finally comprehending the magnitude of their misjudgment. Sarah Martinez represents the finest traditions of American military families, Secretary Hawkins continued. Her brother's sacrifice in Afghanistan saved American lives and exemplified the courage that has defended our nation for over 2 centuries. Sarah's own dedication to service, despite facing ridicule and harassment from her peers, demonstrates the same strength of character that we seek in our future military leaders. Madison Wells stood 20 feet away from Sarah, her face pale as she realized the implications of the secretary's words. The girl she had tormented for months as a wannabe soldier was being personally honored by the highest civilian authority in the American military establishment. I am here today to offer Sarah Martinez a presidential appointment to the United States Military Academy at West Point, Secretary Hawkins announced, producing an official document from one of the briefcases carried by her aides. This appointment comes with full scholarship, guaranteed placement in advanced leadership programs, and the opportunity to serve as an officer in the United States Army upon graduation. The crowd erupted in applause, but Sarah stood motionless, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what was being offered. West Point appointments were among the most competitive positions in American higher education, typically requiring congressional recommendations and perfect academic records. The idea that she was being offered direct presidential appointments seemed impossible. General Morrison leaned close to Sarah's ear. "Your brother would be so proud," he whispered. "This appointment is not just recognition of your potential, but honor for his sacrifice. The Army takes care of its own, and that includes the families of fallen soldiers." Secretary Hawkins gestured for Sarah to approach the microphone. "I believe Cadet Martinez would like to address her fellow students." Sarah stepped forward, her legs still trembling from shock and emotion. She looked out at the sea of faces that had tormented her throughout the school year, seeing expressions of amazement, shame, and newfound respect. Madison and her group stood with their heads down, unable to meet Sarah's eyes. "I want to thank Secretary Hawkins, General Morrison, and all the military personnel who came here today," Sarah began, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. "But, most of all, I want to thank my brother Miguel, who showed me what real service means, and my mother, who supported my dreams even when other people didn't understand them." She paused, looking directly at Madison and the students who had mocked her. "To my classmates who questioned my commitment to military service, I want you to know that I don't hold any anger toward you. You didn't understand what my uniform represented because you've been fortunate enough to live in a community where military sacrifice might seem distant or abstract." Madison's eyes filled with tears as she realized the grace with which Sarah was handling her moment of vindication. Instead of using the opportunity for revenge, Sarah was offering understanding and forgiveness. "My brother died protecting the freedom of people he had never met, including the freedom to disagree with his choices or to misunderstand his sacrifice," Sarah continued. "Today showed me that sometimes people need to see the consequences of service before they can understand its value. I hope this helps everyone appreciate the military families in our community who have given so much for our security." Elena Martinez had made her way onto the field and now stood beside her daughter, tears streaming down her face as she watched Sarah handle the situation with maturity that belied her 16 years. Captain Rodriguez stood nearby, beaming with pride at the young woman he had mentored through her darkest moments of doubt. Principal Roberts approached the microphone, clearly emotional as he addressed his student body. "I want to apologize to Sarah and to all military families in our community for any disrespect they have experienced at our school. Today has shown us that we need to do better in teaching our students about the value of service and sacrifice." He turned to face Sarah directly. "Sarah, you have shown our entire school community what dignity and integrity look like. You have my commitment that Westfield High School will implement programs to better honor military families and educate our students about the importance of military service." Secretary Hawkins stepped forward again, producing another document. "I have one more announcement to make. The Department of Defense is establishing the Miguel Martinez Memorial Scholarship for students who demonstrate exceptional commitment to military service despite facing adversity. Sarah will be the first recipient, but this scholarship will continue to honor her brother's memory by supporting other young people who choose the path of service." The crowd's applause was thunderous now, but Sarah barely heard it. She was thinking about Miguel and how proud he would be to see his sacrifice creating opportunities for other young people to serve their country. The scholarship bearing his name would ensure that his legacy lived on long after Sarah had graduated and begun her own military career. As the ceremony concluded, something unexpected happened. Students began approaching Sarah, not to mock or question her choices, but to apologize and express genuine respect for her commitment. The dramatic demonstration of military support had transformed their understanding of what Sarah represented. Madison was among the first to approach. "Sarah, I am so sorry," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I didn't understand. I never knew your brother was a real hero, and you've been honoring him all along. I feel terrible about how we treated you." "Madison, you didn't know," Sarah replied with genuine kindness. "None of you knew the whole story. But maybe now we can start fresh, and maybe you can help me make sure other military families at our school feel more welcome." The exchange between the two girls symbolized the transformation that was taking place throughout the school community. Students who had participated in the mockery were confronting their own behavior and beginning to understand the real impact of their words and actions. As the Black Hawk helicopter prepared for departure, Secretary Hawkins pulled Sarah aside for a private conversation. "Sarah, the appointment to West Point is just the beginning. Your performance at the Civil Air Patrol encampment and your response to today's ceremony have convinced us that you have the potential to become a significant military leader. We'll be watching your career with great interest." "Ma'am, I just want to serve with honor like my brother did," Sarah replied. "You're already doing that," Secretary Hawkins said with a smile. "Your brother's courage was demonstrated in a moment of crisis. Your courage has been demonstrated every day for months as you maintained your values despite constant pressure to abandon them. That kind of sustained moral courage is exactly what we need in our future officers." As the helicopter lifted off from the football field, carrying the Secretary of Defense back to Washington, Sarah stood surrounded by family, friends from her Civil Air Patrol squadron, and newly respectful classmates. The jacket that had made her a target of mockery was now adorned with medals recognizing her exceptional potential for military leadership. But perhaps the most meaningful change was in the atmosphere at Westfield High School itself. The dramatic ceremony had forced the entire school community to confront their own assumptions about service, sacrifice, and the young woman they had dismissed as merely playing soldier. In the days that followed, Sarah found herself in a completely transformed social environment. Students who had never spoken to her before approached with questions about military service, expressions of support, and requests for information about programs like Civil Air Patrol. Some even asked about volunteer opportunities to support military families in the community. The local newspaper ran a front-page story about the ceremony, and the accompanying photos showed Sarah receiving her medals while the Black Hawk helicopter dominated the background. The headline read, "Local Student Receives Presidential Appointment to West Point," but the story that emerged was about much more than academic achievement. Captain Rodriguez organized a community reception to honor Sarah and to educate residents about the military families living among them. The event drew hundreds of attendees, including many parents who wanted to ensure their children understood the importance of respecting military service. Elena Martinez addressed the gathering, speaking about the pain of losing Miguel and the pride of watching Sarah honor his memory through her own commitment to service. "Military families sacrifice more than most people realize," she said. "Not just the soldiers who deploy, but their families who support them and carry on their legacy. Sarah has shown that service continues even after the ultimate sacrifice is made." Madison Wells attended the reception with her parents, seeking an opportunity to make a more complete apology to Sarah and her family. The conversation between the two girls was emotional but healing, representing the kind of reconciliation that can emerge when people take the time to truly understand each other's experiences. "Sarah, I want you to know that I've talked to my parents about volunteering with organizations that support military families," Madison said. "I want to do something meaningful to make up for how I treated you. Maybe I can help other students avoid making the same mistakes I made." "Madison, that would be wonderful," Sarah replied. "The best way to honor military service is to support military families, and the best way to support military families is to understand what they've sacrificed for all of us." As summer approached and graduation loomed for the senior class, Sarah Martinez had become a different kind of symbol at Westfield High School. Instead of being mocked as a girl playing soldier, she was respected as a young woman whose commitment to service had earned recognition from the highest levels of American military leadership. The jacket she wore every Friday was no longer a source of ridicule but a symbol of honor that reminded everyone of the sacrifices made by American soldiers and their families. Miguel's name tape had become a memorial that students passed respectfully in the hallways, understanding finally what it represented. On her last day of junior year, Sarah stood on the football field where the Black Hawk helicopter had landed just 2 months earlier. She was no longer the isolated, mocked girl who had endured months of harassment for honoring her brother's memory. She was a young woman with a clear future, strong friendships, and the respect of her entire school community. As she looked up at the sky, imagining Miguel watching over her, Sarah Martinez knew that she had successfully honored his sacrifice while building her own legacy of service. The girl in camouflage had become exactly what she had always been, a future leader whose commitment to serving something greater than herself would inspire others for years to come. The mockery had ended not with anger or revenge, but with understanding, respect, and the recognition that true strength comes from maintaining your values even when the whole world seems to be laughing. And sometimes, just sometimes, the world stops laughing long enough to listen, learn, and change for the better.